Hey everybody, this is ArcRiseGen, and I'm making this video for Reddit user Evane7. So what I did was on the JRPG subreddit, I posted a bit of like an FAQ kind of thing for Last Remnant because the game's coming out in 2 days. And because I spent so much time, I love this game, spent so much time on it, that I felt like, it would be easier for people to just ask questions there about the game. Because this is a remaster, and originally when this game came out, it was very confusing for people. It was very confusing for me too. So I got a request asking about the combat system and how the leveling system works in this game. Now, the way the gameplay works is you'll get up to a max of 18 units by around 2/3 into the story, and you split these 18 units, 18 characters, into up to 5 different groups. You can use 4 groups if you want, but I like to keep my guys spread out. Now, within each of these groups are these characters you can either get from the story or you can hire as mercenaries. Most of them will be mercenaries, and also I removed any of the spoiler characters in the game that you'll probably there are some spoiler characters, so I removed them from my party before making this video. I realized that after like 5 minutes into making the last video. So alright, so each party member has different stats. Now let me go to party members. So Torgal here has strength, intellect, speed, and management. Now strength, intellect, and speed are amongst every character in the game. The 4th personality trait, nobody knows what that really is, and there were some ideas of what it might be, but nobody really knows for sure. And there's HP and AP. Now, the way leveling in this game works is very unique in the sense that it's never really done like this. The closest I can think of is Final Fantasy 2 for I guess for a more wider understanding of it, but it's a lot closer to Saga series, which is a very it's very niche RPG series by Square. Now, to raise strength in this game, you simply just attack with physical hits, and eventually you'll get stat increases. With intellect, you use magic attacks. Speed doesn't have a doesn't have a trigger like that, I think. HP, your character has to get hit, but they have to survive the hit too. And for ability points, you just use different attacks and magics that will eat up your ability points, and then after a while you'll start gaining more ability points per turn. So right here, Torgal has 3200 attack HP and plus 16 AP out of 138. So his max AP that he can hold is 138. And every time it's his turn, he gets 16 more AP. The AP is used for different attack arts. Like him, I made him focus solely on quad-wielding weapons. So he'll use all of his ability points just for these attacks, and potion art they let him use, and his weapon art, Lose Revenge. Now, let's look at one of my magic users, Pagus. With him, his intellect is much higher because he is more focused on healing and magic attacks, mostly with healing and support magic, which are called wards. Which is, you'll barely find any people with wards in the game. It's a very good art. And another thing I want to mention is the classes. Now, the classes are nothing like you'd expect from Final Fantasy games, especially like 5 or Tactics. In this, classes aren't as important. They just kind of come up, especially with the new people, people playing the game for the first time. So Pagus is a legendary healer. This just means that his healing arts have a higher overall level than his other arts. So he'll have bonus healing efficiency. Let's look at...
Have you never laid eyes on a Subani?
I'm not sure attackers. Okay, Paladin. So with Rush, he has a Paladin, which means that he is running a sword and a shield, and he gets the ability to defend his partners. So your class is based on what combat art or mystic art or item art your character has a higher level for, and what kind of equipment they're using. And certain classes will give you certain abilities. Paladin will get you cover. I think Cavalier gets you defend, and so on. There's a lot of classes in the game, and they also have like these, I guess you could say, innate abilities. I remember one of them is, I forgot the name of which class it was, but it basically makes them immune to curse. There's another one immune to poison, and so on. Now, one of the biggest complaints I did have with the game, and I still do, and I know people will always have complaints about this, is the only character you can change equipment on is the main character himself. He's the only character you're allowed to change weapons on. The good thing is he can equip almost every weapon that's not too big for him or is not too small for him. Weapons that are too big or too small will say Yama specific or CT specific. It's just different races in the game. And he also can't run any of those quad wield weapons. But like the others, I can't change Roberto. I can't change Balsan. I can't change Wingale. I can't change any of their equipment. So that's the only complaint I can think of right now that will, you know, put people off. Now, I'm playing this on hard mode, New Game Plus. So fights are much harder in this. The enemies scale differently. Now, on the top right, underneath how much gold I have, is my battle rank. Battle rank measures how many fights you've been in, and this was not explained well in the game. So, in order for you to gain stats in this game, you cannot grind on weak enemies like you could in any other JRPG. Think of it like this. If you're constantly working out, and your workout gets to the point where you're not really gaining any muscle mass because you're so used to it that you're not really gaining much, your battle rank is your workout. So if your battle rank is much higher than the enemies, you're not going to get any stats. If your battle rank is the same as the enemies, then you have a decent chance of getting a couple of stats. And if your battle rank is much lower than the enemies, then you have a much higher chance of getting a bunch of stats at once, which is the best scenario that you want. So one of the tips I can give to people right away about this game is do not grind on enemies that are much weaker than you. But I'll tell you how you can tell what the battle rank is. So let's just go fight 2 Mandragoras here.
Let's do this.
Alright, so in this fight, you'll see in the screen that I can give commands to my groups. I turned off turbo mode. I'm gonna turn off the critical trigger automatic stuff. I usually turn those on when I'm leveling up. Oh, not leveling up, when I'm grinding for materials. Now, on the top it says morale. That will tell you what your battle rank is in relative to the enemies. Since the morale is in the middle right now, it tells me that my battle rank is more or less about the same as the enemies. So I have a decent chance of getting stat gains. Now let's just say if there's a lot more blue than red, that means I have a very low chance of getting stats, and the fight's gonna go easy. If the morale is much more red than there is blue, that means the enemy's battle rank is higher, and I have a very high chance of gaining stats if I survive. Now, the way the enemies scale in this game, similar to the way enemies scaled in Final Fantasy VIII, where the higher your level was, the stronger the enemies got. In this game, it's pretty much the same principle. The higher your battle rank gets, the stronger the enemies get. Now, to keep the battle rank at a healthy level, just do not keep grinding on enemies in fights where your morale starts much higher than theirs. If it's the same, or it's even if it's slightly higher, then you're fine. If it's low, if your morale is lower than theirs at the start of the fight, that's even better. Alright, so let's just go through a couple of basics about the combat. So you give whole commands to each group. Now, Torgal Squad, so I'm targeting Mandragora Group A right now on the bottom right, and I can just use regular attack, I can take them out all at once or attack with item arts. So each of these commands has their own kind of idea or logic behind it. Take them all out once basically means I'm using an attack that can attack all 3 party members in that Mandragora group. Attack with item arts just means I'm using an item art who Darian is going to use Frost Tincture. Now you can also just switch targets around too. And the mini map on the top right just shows you positions of everybody, and this is actually important. It actually plays into the game. So let's just say, for example, I want to go against Group B here. Since I switched to Group B, my attack options change because of the distance. So Torgal can now use Swift Quadrille, or Darian can still stick to his item arts. Item arts are special kind of art, not even special kinds, they're very basic art which require items to actually use. And if I go to Mandragora Group C with Torgal, I can do Nibble, Slice, and Dice. So, you know what, let's just stick with A, and let's go take them all out once with Retribution. Same principle here. Now, Pogs' squad gets this ability here, Attack from Afar. So because of how far he is from the enemy, he can actually attack the enemy without attacking them head on, kind of like sniping them with magic. So let's just go with that. Also, recover your health. So the way the commands work in this game is they're very reactive and preemptive. So if I put recover your health, I can put him in standby mode, and if a party is starting to lose health, when it's his turn, instead of going to fight someone, he'll go directly to that group to heal them when it's his group's turn. Emmy, in her class, she gets the defend command, which lets them absorb a lot of damage, and it's great when you're using this kind of group as the focus, as the decoy squad. Cut off the leader. So every union has a leader, and if that leader dies, then the union doesn't work well. They start the AI takes over completely. But this can also screw the opponent over, the enemies over too. If you cut off their leader, they sometimes won't even do any attacks. So cut off their leader. Now Rush here has a special magic skill that you get much later in the game, and this is called Decoy. This will pretty much aggro monsters to his group, which is very useful in certain fights, especially if you're doing it with a group that can defend. And these two, Blockter and Roberto, can defend, so it's a great way to work. And Stand Your Ground. So Stand Your Ground in this is pretty much where they will stick in standby mode, and sticking in standby mode will help them recover ability points much faster. But with Stand Your Ground as an option, they do not get a surprise attack. If an enemy group tries to go for them head-on, they will take that head-on damage. They will not take extra damage. They will take regular damage. So I'm going to stay the same, so let's go with that. Alright, so I turned off Turbo and I turned off Critical Trigger. Let's go. Alright, so these two are defending and he's going to run Decoy now. So now their enemies are going to target them. And because they were targeting them in the first place, I got to interfere with them. So I can do a little extra damage, and I screw up what their main target focus was. Same thing with this group, because the decoy aggroes everybody, I get to interfere. And that's called a critical trigger. With critical triggers, you pretty much do a little extra damage, and if you get all of them all right, party members who are supposed to go later actually get prioritized over the enemy. Flank attack, you're just attacking the side, and you do extra damage. These kinds of... oh, missed it. These kinds of flank attacks can keep building up, and you'll do more and more damage each time. Deadlock basically means it's a one-on-one. Oh, I got to block with a shield. If you block with a shield or your guy must avoid, you can do the extra damage.
Did everyone see what
So I gained some stats. The reason I didn't gain that many stats is because the battle ranks were pretty even, and there were very few amount of enemies. The more enemies you have, the more stats you can get, and the better loot you can get. The great thing about loot in this game is you sometimes get the monster itself. Now you can sell the monster for a decent amount of gold, or you can break down the monster for parts that you can use for synthesis. And if your party members need certain parts, they'll just ask for it right away. You don't need to memorize it. They will just ask you for it right there, and you can choose whether or not you want to give it to them or not, or just use it for your own crap. And I got fairy herbs, which are good for item arts. So these are pretty much the basics of the game. Uh, I, like I said, I've played this game so many times that this is why my stats are like this at a low battle rank right now. 63 is actually pretty low. So here are my main tips with people who are just starting to get into the game or who kind of got frustrated with the game. Don't grind on weak enemies. If your morale is starting out much higher, meaning that there is much more blue than red, you don't need to grind on them. Grinding on them is just going to make the enemy stronger later, and your stats are not going to catch up properly. The other tip is try to stick with what your gut says in terms of what kind of path you want your units to take. So whenever you hit certain battle ranks in the game, your party members will ask you, "Oh, what path should I take? Combat, Mystic, or Balance?" Look at their kind of like get used to them, get used to the characters that you have, and you'll know what you want to give them. Like Cademan here, you get him, you hire him from a guild later, and his strength starts off much higher than his intellect. So, you know, I always pick combat for him because he's natural fighter. With Lashao, I pick Mystic Arts because his intellect is naturally higher than his strength. But, you know, I hope this helps, and if you have any questions about this game or how the basic mechanics work, feel free to leave me a message on the channel this is going to be uploaded on, or if you guys are watching this connected through Reddit, ask me there as well. Alright, this is Jen signing out, and hope you guys get this game and have fun with it.